and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Today I've brought in a couple of instruments that, well, one is a little more rare than the other, but most people don't have them, but they don't look rare, and it's possible to get them. So at any rate, this one here, which is cream in color, is a water pipe. Now, there's a story behind it. There's a story behind a lot of my instruments, but there was a man who wanted to see me and wanted to see my instruments. Now, this was a few years ago, and I didn't have as many instruments as I have now, but I had quite a few. And he'd talked to somebody about me, and that person contacted me, can he come over and see your instruments? So I invited him over, and we had him for lunch, and he saw all of my instruments. I had them all draped out on the table. I had most of them out at any rate, and he enjoyed looking at them. He loves instruments, he loves music, and he loves creating music, and he wants to see people who have instruments, and he needs to see all of the instruments they have and so forth. So this he did as a reward for me. What he did for people who let him see their instruments and just kind of visit with them about the instruments, he makes them an instrument. And what this is water pipe. It's just plain water pipe. And he does a good job. He has just like a little flute, a straight flute. He has a mouthpiece right here, and of course in the inside, and you can't see it, but there's like a cork. And the cork prevents the air from going both sides at once. Now you have to remember that all of the air that you put into a flute or other instrument, it has to be going in the same direction for you to get a tone. So if I were to look in, and I think maybe what I'll do is take my conductor's baton and put it in the top, and it only goes down that far. Why? Because the cork is there. And you can't see it. I mean, I can hold it up, but there's no way, I think, that you can look in there and see it. I can see it because it's close by, but the thing is, it has to prevent the air from going out. Now, if you're playing a clarinet or a saxophone or a flute, the air's going to go in the same direction. With the flute, there's going to be a little cap on the top of the flute. And sometimes that cap comes off and you can screw it back on, but that prevents it from the air from going in that direction, so all the air goes down in the direction of where the tone holes are, which would be right here. And so what you would do, like a flute, you would blow across that tone hole, which is right here. That becomes the mouthpiece, and you hold it to one side like this. This is the way that you hold your flute. Let me put this down. And then when you blow it, that cork prevents the air from going in that direction, and it all goes down to the right where the tone holes are. And then you do your fingering, lift your fingers up, and you can get the notes that you want to get. That's the way, that's the principle of the flute. I have any number of them. It's the principle of some of the other instruments that I have as well. So the air has to be going in the same direction, and this is water pipe. Well, I was surprised when he gave it to me. He says, I want to give you a little gift to thank you for having me, and that's what he gave me. And he makes them, and they work. They really do work. Now, I'm not saying they're easy to play, but they do work. And he has it geared so he knows exactly where to put the holes so that when you play the tones, they're the right tones. You know, some of the inexpensive instruments that I have, the tones aren't exactly accurate. And I think what's happened with the tones is the fact that they don't have the holes in exactly the right position, and that's going to change the pitch of that note that comes out from that position and every note below it. One thing you have to remember about woodwind instruments, and I don't know so much about the brass, so I can't make a connection there, but if you have something wrong with a woodwind instrument, most of the notes are straight up and down. If you have a problem with your woodwind instrument at a certain point, every note below it is going to be affected. And so if it's wrong at some level, the notes, until you get to to that level are okay, and then the rest of the notes are somehow off, usually off in pitch. So I have some instruments that play fine until you get to that last note, and then it's sharp. Well, they probably put the hold in a little bit too close, and it raises the pitch of the tone enough so that it's not accurate. So this is my water pipe flute. And he said, Pat, you can take it anywhere. You can play it anywhere. You can take it to the beach. You can sit on it. Don't worry about sand. If you get sand in it, just wash it off. Rinse it off, it'll be fine. So it's an instrument that you can take anywhere with you. I bet there aren't many people that have a water pipe flute, but this is one. The other instrument I want to show you, it's kind of a mistake. Here's a regular recorder. I've had it for quite a few years. A friend of mine came to me one day and said, Pat, I just go by this place. It's like an eternal road sale or something, garage sale. They have it every day. And they have this instrument. And do you want me to pick it up? And I said, yes, and I'll reimburse you. So she picked it up, and I paid her for it. And I got it home, and I played it. And it's not quite right. And I'm going to play it. Maybe you can catch it. What's going to happen is if I get it to the higher register, the notes aren't going to come in so clear. Sometimes it might squeak a little. It's not stable. Sometimes you get the note, sometimes you get a squeak. It bounced up to an octave. I didn't intend it to, but there are little idiosyncrasies about it. And I'm saying, what is the matter with this instrument that it should do that? I mean, I can play it. It's easy to play, but you just don't know exactly what you're going to get out of it when you do play it. And then I noticed something about it. The wood, and I hope you can pick this up, the wood is different from the top and from the bottom. And I looked at the labels on it, and they're two different instruments put together as one. The top part is a Hohner Educator made in Germany, and the bottom is West Germany, just says West Germany. These are two different instruments, and somebody, probably a child, took the head joint, which is right here, of one instrument and put it on the foot joint of another instrument just to see if it would play. It's always a bad idea to do that. It's a very bad idea to do that. So I think just a warning that instruments, if you have, even if they're made by the same company, this isn't, but even if it's made by the same company, you should never interchange parts because they were made for the part they were made for, and even a little tiny difference in the width or the depth or whatever, it can change the whole nature of the instrument. And this is what happened to this, but I'm glad to have it because I've been able to use it in sermons in terms of how you can be used by God even if you're not perfect, because this will play. It just doesn't play as much as I would like to have it play. Very nice, it's natural wood, but two different companies and two different sections put together, and it's something that you never want to do because the instrument itself, well, what is it? Is it the bottom part? Is it West German instrument, or is it the Hohner? It's actually both put together. And with an instrument like this, you see, it's one solid unit, the body and the foot joint are one solid unit. There's no separate foot joint like a lot of the instruments have. And as a result of that, you know, I call it my two-in-one instrument. But I can use it for a lot of things. I can use it for lecturing. I can use it for a lot of things. So I always keep it, and I do like it. But I just can't do solos on it because it's just not predictable enough. The other thing I notice about this, and I don't know if you can catch this, the mouthpiece, the part of the inside of the mouthpiece kind of shows its level. You know, when you have a mouthpiece, you blow into it, and you can see there's a little opening there. But you can also see, and you may not be able to see it, but there's a little white. That little white around the instrument is the inward part of the instrument, which would be a part of the fipple. Usually it does not show. I don't know if it was ever made to show, but it does in this. And I don't think it's a problem, but it's just I've never seen an instrument that's like that before. So anyway, this is it. Now I want to show you some things about timing. I told you for the last segment we talked about the notes and how they're formed and, you know, what they're worth and all of that. But I want to go into timing. Most timing is 3/4 or 4/4 time for the kinds of music that we do. But it can be 2/2, it can be 8/16, it can be all kinds of time. So here's your whole note. This is worth 3 beats. Because this is 3/4 time, this whole note is worth 3 beats. The dotted half is also worth 3 beats. Now, the reason it's worth 3 beats is the fact that the half note is usually worth 2 beats, 2 halves to a whole. But if you put a dot beside it, it's worth half of what it normally would be worth. Half of 2 is 1. So you add that 1 to that half. That's what the dot does, basically, and it ends up that you have a 3-beat note. 3 quarter notes make a 3, and then the 8th notes 1 and 2 and 3 and so you really have 6 8th notes. You have the dotted 8th and 16th. Each one is worth 1 beat, so you get 3 of those and you have 3 beats. Your rest, this is a single rest. This is a quarter rest. There are 3 of them. You take care of your rest just the same and read your rest the same way as you read your notes. There's a definite pattern. This is 4/4 time. This is on the 4th line up. That little square right there, I'm kind of jumping down here, but that's worth 4 beats for a rest. You would not play for 4 beats. In other words, there would be a whole measure here where you would not be playing because that's your 4th rest. If this were 3/4 time, this rest would be worth 3 beats. If it were 2/2 time, this rest would be worth 2 beats. So you read it the same as you read the notes. These quarter rests, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can even combine them. If I wanted a rest for 6 beats, supposing I had 6/8 time, how do I get a rest for a whole 6 beats? I could put this little thing down, that would be 4 beats, add a dot to it, it would be a dotted rest, and that adds 2 more beats because half of your 4 is 2, and I would get from that a 6-beat rest. Okay, it's getting a little more complicated. Then you have, if this is 4/4 time, this is going to be worth 4 beats. These 2 are going to be worth 2 beats each, and they're going to be 4 beats. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, each quarter note is worth 1 beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's half of the quarters, so they're all 8th notes. Notice they have this body, they have the stems, and that little line is the flag. That's a single flag for all of them. Then you have your dotted 8th and 16th. Each one is worth a beat, so you have 4 beats here. This rest is worth 4 beats, as I mentioned before. These 4 quarter rests are worth 4 beats, so that's a whole measures rest right there. Then when you get to the 16th notes, all 4/16 is 1 beat. So here's 1, here's 2. You've got 4. You've got 2 of them, but it turns out they're really 4 in combination. That's another beat, another beat, another beat, and so that's your 4 beats right there. Now these are just some notes I put on. It's not any specific thing. I just put these notes in for people to be able to identify them. A half note with the stem up, a half note with the stem down, a quarter note with the stem up, quarter note with the stem down, 8th notes with stem up, 8th note with stem down, 8th note with 1 line between them, so there's your 2 right there, and 8th note here, and with the stems down, and the single line is the flag. And then with these, the 2 lines are the flags for the 16ths, and you can write them in 2, 3, 4, however you want to. So that's basically all your timing. The timing that we do in here for basic music is usually going to be 6/8, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. And 2/2, kind of iffy. Sometimes I'll use it. Usually I won't. When I'm teaching children, when I talk about timing, it's a case of subdividing. You know, you cut this and you get that. You cut a whole, you get a half. You cut a half, you get a quarter, and so forth. So I like to, if I'm teaching children, and I'm not going into the whole thing today, but this is an easy way to understand it. I used what I call my donut method. What I did was I bought a package of donuts. I went into a place where I was working, and when no one else was there, and I put the donut on the photocopy machine, and I photocopied the donut. I didn't put anything over the top, and you can see there are a few little crumbs, but it came out so good. Then all I had to do was just re-photocopy my photocopied version and make the cuts and everything so you can see that it can be sectioned off. My poor sister said, "How did you cut a donut that closely?" I said, "I didn't. I took the first picture, and then I made photocopies of it, and then I just cut it with scissors." She thought I had a separate donut and I cut it all separately. Well, that wouldn't have worked out. It would be just a crummy mess. So anyway, this is the whole donut. This is the whole note. You have 2 halves, and this is, you cut the donut in half. You have 2 halves. Here are your 2 halves. That's why they're called half notes. You cut the halves into quarters. I could have done a pizza just as well. 2 halves and then you get the quarters. Here are the quarters. 4 quarters, 2 halves, 1 whole. And then you can further split the quarters into 8s. Here are the 8s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you count, there would be 8 sections on this last picture. And what I did was a whole method of teaching timing using the donut. So if you're working with a child, or if you happen to have a difficulty, imagine something that's whole. It's round and it's whole. A pizza, a donut, whatever. If you cut it in half, then you have the halves. You cut the halves, and you get quarters. You cut the quarters, and you get 8s. If you were to cut the 8s, you would get 16ths. If you were to cut the 16ths, you get 32nd. That's where your 32nd notes come from. And if you were to cut the 32nd, you would have 64ths. Now, we wouldn't be working with 32nd and 64ths, but this takes you from the whole down to the 8th. It is a real easy way for children to understand. And let's see, I don't know what I have here. I have this marked out. 4/4 time. If you're looking at time signatures, you'll have something that's called 4/4. That means there are 4 beats to a measure, and they're equivalent to 4 quarter notes. But that doesn't mean you're writing 4 quarter notes in every measure. You could write all kinds of notes, but it would have to equal 4. Then 3/4, that you have 3 beats to a measure, and they're all equal to 3 quarter notes. So 3 beats to a measure equal to 4 quarter notes. 2/4 would be 2 beats to a measure, and it would be equal to having 2 quarter notes. 2/2 time is sometimes called cut time, which is why I put the C there. You take your 4/4 and you split it, and you have 2/2 time. And you use a lot of timing like that for marches. Then you have the 6/8 time, which is very much like waltz tempo. It's like 3/4, but you're using 8th notes. 6 beats to a measure, and it is the equivalent of 6/8 notes, not quarter notes, but 8th notes. This is what we usually deal with. Here's your quarter, here's your 8th, Here's your 16th. I just wrote that down just kind of as a way to remind you of it. So I'm going to play a song. Let me get this down. I want you to watch the timing of it. I know that I don't have much chance to go into it because we're almost out of time. So I want to, next time we meet, I will be going into the same song, probably more, and playing it with different time signatures and coming out with the exact same song. So this is a waltz that I just wrote, and I'm going to deal with it as much time as I have, which isn't much. So if you just kind of look at this page if you can, that's the music for the waltz I just wrote. Now, if I have time, I'll point out some things to you, and if not, we'll just do it next time. So this it is. We know 3/4 time, so we know we have 3 beats to the measure. Okay, so here it goes. That's the whole waltz. And let me just point out a couple of things to you, and I will have to continue it next time because we don't have time to finish it. Here is the time signature 3/4. Well, so we know it's waltz tempo, and it's like 3 beats to a measure, and these 3 beats are the equivalent of quarter notes. So this half note, which I start off with, is 2 beats, and this is the 3rd beat. That makes your 3 beats for the for the 3/4 time. Then you get the whole note. Notice it's the only note in the measure. That's worth 3 beats simply because it's a whole note. It is worth whatever the time signature for the music is. But that's held over to this. This is 3 beats. 3 beats as quarter notes, but I put a hold. This is the hold. Sometimes it's called a fermata. Doesn't matter, it means the same thing. You don't tongue that note. You play that note and you add that note to this note, so you're really holding this note for 4 beats instead of 3, but you count it as 3. So 1, 2, 3, 1, and then 2, 3, you've got the 3 quarter notes. Then this is 1, 2, 3 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, and then here is a little breath mark. Most phrases are about 4 measures, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're 4 measures. It's not the same as the whole. The phrase marks is like it's like a sentence. You talk in phrases. You take breaths. You slow down. You know, you emphasize certain things. So you talk in phrases, and this would be a phrase. It's like a group of notes that are together, and they make a statement in a sense. They have a certain melody to them. This is smaller curve is the fermata, it's the hold. And actually it is a hold. Fermata would make you hold it longer. So anyway, it is the hold. And then you get down here, 1, 2, breath mark. This is a hold, hold. Here, here, and here. So you tongue this note, it's a whole note. You hold it for 3 beats. You don't tongue this, and you don't tongue that. So you're really holding this for 9 beats. You're holding all of those measures together as a long note. They're separate notes, but because of the hold is over them, you keep them as one note. Then you get the phrase marks again. Well, I don't have too much time left. I want to go over this a lot more with you because there's a lot more. Breath marks, when do you breathe? When do you hold? And how do you count the music? And I didn't put phrase marks all over it because it would just have so many of them, it would be hard to read it. And more or less, if you're used to playing music, you'll know when to breathe. You don't have to have marks, but a lot of music does have little apostrophes. That's what they look like. And and there is, it's for you to be able to breathe. So I'm going to close it here because I'm definitely running out of time, and we'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.